I'll take a... What did you say?
I made a giant mistake with Yume Nikki, and I suspect it's one others will make too. 20 years after anything's release is enough time for its age to be felt, for its scares and general feel to lose their potency. Put another way, I expected this to be a history lesson, a chance to connect with the main inspiration for my favorite RPG Maker games, but not something that holds up on its own. After all, Yume Nikki is cited amongst more than a handful of horror and RPG Maker titles as an influence, particularly for its abstraction and exploration elements. For me, underestimating this game was a costly mistake. Yume not only lives up to the hype from its fans, but embeds itself as one of the most unnerving, uncomfortable, and disturbing games I've ever played. The decades it's culminated since release have done nothing but add to its mystique and atmosphere. But unlike most games that use the word atmosphere as a descriptor, Yume Nikki is not breathtaking. It is suffocating. Yet even in that suffocation, there are fleeting glimpses of beauty, compassion, and years after its original release, a new ending that's kind of beautiful. You awaken in a normal enough bedroom. Faint sounds of your console across the carpet fill the silent air, and pale purple walls surround wooden floors on all sides. This is where routines are made, and it's where our protagonist Madotsuki often finds herself. Admittedly, there's not much you can do here. You can't leave through the door. At the table, you can save your game. If you're feeling bored, you can play a minigame not unlike that bird thing from the WarioWare series. Outside, you'll find your balcony. Nothing can be done here as of now, though it is a way to get some air. Like a AAA game, we quickly find ourselves at a loss for interesting things to do, and retreat into our bed to engage with Yume Nikki's main draw, the dreams. This video is brought to you by TinyBuild. As of recently, they released an amazing roguelite called Drill Core, which combines unit management with real-time action. Defend your mining rack as you descend into foreign planets and collect loot to advance. There's a huge range of ways you can upgrade your structures, from increasing your resource generation rate to going for raw damage. I always love when games have multiple playstyles and lots of build customization, and this game definitely does just that. I have a whole video on it if you'd like to check it out. Click the link in the description to see the Steam page, and thank you so much to TinyBuild for sponsoring even though I haven't played Hello Neighbor. Once sleep takes you, you'll emerge in a room largely similar to the one before, yet this time we can leave Madotsuki's room. Entering reveals the Nexus, a hub area with 12 distinct doors leading to the game's levels, each entrance reflecting the area's theme. You're free to approach these in any order you want, but this is a video game, so unless you're an insane person, you go to the forest first. Entering it feels wrong, though, as the sound effect for starting a level in this game is less than flattering. Taking in our surroundings, we notice several strange things, like the glowing symbols beneath our feet, trees suspended in time, and these ghost sprites that linger over you if you interact with them. If you find the frog hopping about, you can touch it to gain the ability to transform into one. More on that later. Something else you might notice is the repetition, and I don't just mean in the environments. Yumi's songs are short and loop often, creating a weird feeling of helplessness and suffocation, almost like you're you're dehydrated in a long stretch of desert, unable to think coherently. This is intentional. Dreams can be beautiful, yes, but often they are paired with helpless thoughts. Not having any clothes in public, being unable to get someone's attention, losing your teeth. Area aesthetics vary wildly in Yume, from a melancholic snowscape to a floorless forest. There are plenty of different places to feel uneasy in. Moreover, each can break from their own theme at any moment. The forest area might abandon its trees and give way to tribal hieroglyphics, or the snow area to an endless pink ocean. Some even have jump scares or just bombard you with creepy, colorful imagery, overwhelming your stimuli. It's random but feels intentional in ways, kind of like a Jackson Pollock painting. It's all over the place, yes, but there's a rhyme and reason to the madness, to create a certain pattern or consistent tone. A heavy sense of atmosphere is welcome too, because Yume Nikki does not have much of anything in the gameplay department. There's no turn-based battles, experience points. It also doesn't have much as far as narrative. Not much at all has been explained about Yume Nikki's story. Of the few things creator Kikiyama has said, quote, "Possessing a dark atmosphere, this game allows you to explore the world inside a dream. There is no particular story or purpose. It is simply an exploring game." No particular story or purpose, sure. That aside, some recurring things become hard to ignore, like they're pointing towards the answer to some mystery, alluding the player to Madotsuki's past through their dreams, even if it means making the player uncomfortable. The game's design does this everywhere. On the surface, many of Yumi's monsters or locations can be considered scary, nothing more, nothing less, but it sometimes echoes a common fear in reality. An endless field of trees can funnel into a highway with depictions of a traffic accident, for example. These are obviously not by-the-numbers dreams a normal girl would have. Perhaps the exploration of these places is a way for Mado to process something. Is Kikiyama being coy? Is there a measurable tragedy that we'll be able to eventually find the answers to? Do those loud-ass boots have something to do with it? Yume doesn't do any one thing to drive home its unsettling tone. From its suspiciously still real-world segments to the implicative NPCs, everything in the dreamscape feels like a breach of Madotsuki's mind, like we're exploring farther than we should, seeing things that weren't meant for our own eyes. At times, the dreamscape feels truly bottomless. The most rewarding moments in Yume Nikki happen when you're 3 layers deep in its world, finding what almost feels like a dev room in other games. On occasion, this takes the form of an entirely new art style. In one instance, I found an 8-bit cabin that changed not just how the world looked, but my pause menu and even the in-game tooltips. In all the years I've known about Yume Nikki, I never knew about this part of it, and it was a treat experiencing it blind. So, what do we need to do in each of these areas to advance? What is it exactly that we're experiencing? To answer one of these questions, the way to advance is by finding effects. Effects are the objective in Yume, forms that upon finding you can summon at any time and use, like turning into a frog or even a severed head. The utility of these are often not obvious or even non-existent. Though there are exceptions, such as the bike, which not only increases your walk speed, but should remove that squeaking that comes from...
Stop it! Don't you hear it?
Gameplay-wise, it feels like a successful marriage of walking sim and Metroidvania, even though neither of those genres were properly named during Yume Nikki's original release. There aren't a ton of areas that are eased or sectioned off by a certain effect, but they're out there. The crux of your time will be spent aimlessly wandering around, hoping you find the next thing you need to progress. If that seems unfun, it kind of is, yet the world is so unrelentingly felt and encroaching that it's hard to feel bored or like you're wasting time. Areas achieve their unnerving feelings in different ways. To highlight how special Yume is in its storytelling, I want to briefly bring up another game that borrows from it, one that I've yet to talk about on this channel. OMORI and Yume Nikki's implementation of dreams as storytelling are both interesting, and it's neat putting them side by side because of how differently they're used in each game. For the few watching that haven't played OMORI, don't worry, I'll be vague. Omocat's game also has a dream world juxtaposed with a real one. Like Yume's, the dream segments do an immaculate job of slowly unraveling the discomfort of the main character. OMORI, however, has a right answer on what sparked Headspace's creation. Clues and allusions to what happened are everywhere, making subsequent playthroughs feel almost like an inside joke only people who have completed the game will understand. There's nothing wrong with having a carefully tailored mystery with a definitive answer that gets revealed before the end. It's done masterfully here. OMORI is one of my favorite games, perhaps even my favorite game. It's the most prevalent title on this channel for a reason. But I think there might be something even more terrifying of not knowing what exactly caused such a Headspace-like environment to occur in the first place. Yes, that is the biggest reason Yume is discussed so often, even 2 decades after its release. Simply put, there is a huge lack of concrete answers to what happened, to what caused such morbid imagery to live inside Medotsuki's mind. Yume Nikki is impressive for what it has, but perhaps even more so for what it doesn't have. Dialogue is non-existent, there's no yellow paint, no tutorials. It ignores the convenience of the player experience, almost not inviting you to explore its cryptic corners and elongated hallways. Hints are few, progression is slow, and environmental secrets lack cues to make their presence known a lot of the time. But while playing it, it's hard not to feel like you're in the presence of something bigger than yourself, something bigger than conventional storytelling, since the world is so unconcerned with your interference and bending to obvious video game tropes like cracked walls and glowing checkpoints. What Yume lacks in mechanics, it makes up for in pure isolation and terror. These dreams feel damned. But the most damning area by far is the mall. The mall is not even the area's official name, simply one it's been given by fans, but it's one of the areas in Yume Nikki that has an odd fascination with anatomy. Many rooms feel like a doctor's office. Posters adorn the walls showing graphs of the human body. There's an NPC with a small bleeding puncture, and on the wall one of the rooms is a poster where a flute is forcefully jammed into someone's mouth. Yume Nikki's ending is sad, abrupt, and not very surprising, all things considered. After gathering all of the game's effects, the player is permitted to go back to the balcony and jump. Credits begin to roll, with a theme that feels equal parts disturbing and relieving. Some have theorized it's meant to sound like the sirens of an ambulance coming to Medotsuki's body. There is no shortage of theories out there about what Yume Nikki actually means. As we touched on earlier, most agree it's about the main character unpacking awful things that have happened to her, a way to cope with the deeply ingrained fears she has, and come to terms with them before her death. Though it does seem a bit unorthodox to unpack everything only to throw it all off the balcony. Perhaps there's solace in processing everything first so your final moments are less burdensome. Maybe Mado gathering all of the effects was a way of testing the waters, like she wanted to relive everything she'd been through and see if she could live with it before making her ultimate decision. But some things aren't cured, they're carried, and in Medotsuki's case it seems her demons were too heavy to lug around. If there are answers to the questions Yume Nikki proposes, no one knows what they are besides Kikiyama themselves. Some things can be surmised from the game's files, including its soundtrack, nothing especially concrete, but the song names do not paint a happy picture. Eternal Darkness, Unhealable Hurts, I Don't Want to Look, and perhaps most terrifying, Midget Appears. If someone said Yume Nikki was a bad video game comprised of mazes, dead ends, and random sprites, I would disagree but understand why they think as much. Overbearing tutorials and frequent lore dumps are certainly immersion-shattering, yes, but so is having to consult a guide. For the reasons I stated earlier, Yume Nikki is not approachable, and though its secrets are the best parts about it, the difficulty of finding those secrets crosses the line from intrigue to irritation at times. Like other games that leave a lasting effect, Yume Nikki spawned its share of fanworks, which is putting it mildly. To name a couple, there's .flow, which follows a girl named Sabitsuki, but her dreams have a very different tone, which I think is a huge strength of a game like this. It lets us more easily see the things a character has experienced, and in a supernatural, creepy way. Easily the most ambitious is Yume Nikki, a massive project that not only serves as a sequel to the original game, but as a collaborative community project that's still active to this day. Moreover, there's quality control too. This isn't Mario Maker where you can just submit anything you want. You need to follow developer guidelines, speak to a team member with a producer role, and of course, create something that's somewhat consistent with the original Yume Nikki. Being able to see other players is cute and all, but I do think it's harder to be scared when a bunch of bumbling hikikomoris are just walking around with their squeaky boots. If all of that somehow wasn't enough to convince you the fan base for this game is thriving, there's even a community event that gets held every now and again called Dream Diary Jam, where people submit their own fan games within a 6-week time frame. It's actually insane. Yume Nikki also got a manga, which I've read, and I have some thoughts. It's an overly literal translation of the source material, like a Let's Player making a comic of themselves playing the game, rather than a genuine expansion and adaptation of it. It's nothing egregious, but considering the source material is so beloved, it's unfortunate the manga medium isn't used to bolster what makes Yume so special. The most insightful thing to spawn for the franchise after the original's release was Yume Nikki Dream Diary, a reimagining of the original in a really odd 3D style. It gamifies things by incorporating puzzle and platforming elements, but they're often lacking compared to other horror titles like Little Nightmares. I felt more like I was playing a normal indie horror game than something that truly brings Yume Nikki into 3D, which I don't even think is a great idea in the first place. Yume's sprite-based art style invites you to use your imagination for what the characters might look like in a more realistic format. Seeing it all represented with no room for theater of the mind understandably rubbed many the wrong way. A piece that was more well received was the light novel Yume Nikki I Am Not in Your Dream. It does a solid job of using the medium of chapter books to invoke the same feelings of discomfort, almost like a Dungeons & Dragons GM explaining the setting to you. Some of the passages are perfect encapsulations of Kikiyama's original game. Drenched in loneliness and silence, it's like the trek between such lively places as cram school, or work, and the home where you can relax and be at peace. It's that kind of nauseating scene that seems to be a manifestation of that mild anxiety that exists in the cracks between happiness, between peace. There is nothing but an expansive darkness. Beneath your feet float several things that look like they could be either gods or devils, and yet they make no attempt to interact with you, as if they have no interest in you, content merely to flash their wide, detestable grins. So some of the fan games are great, but official extensions will almost always falter because of how they are at odds with the mystery component that makes Yume so interesting. We don't know the tragic event or events that ultimately drove Madotsuki to do what she did. We don't even know what each of the areas in her head are supposed to represent. Not exactly, anyway. If you're worried about Yumi's creator over-explaining things like this on the regular, don't. The manga and additional game are exceptions, as most of the time, this dude refuses to expand on anything. Kikiyama is famously mysterious. A true reflection of Yume Nikki in person form. They have no social medias and are radio silent for the most part. Toby Fox somehow got an interview with them, but on the condition most of the questions could be answered with a yes or a no. Toby does his best to give the column more substance, like explaining why he wanted to ask certain questions, but for the most part it's not a particularly interesting read, though we do find out that Kikiyama did play Dream Emulator LSD, which is the only game before Yume to involve exploring a psychological dreamscape with no real purpose, so that's a neat bit of context, but it's not revealed whether this was before, during, or after Yumi's creation. I would guess before. We also find out what Kiki would order at a Denny's if they went to eat with Toby. Riveting. Up to this point of the video, I've purposefully not exposed myself to many fan theories or views on the games, so as not to bias my perspective, but I did want to talk about one idea that I eventually saw multiple times. It doesn't have an exact name, so I'll use this video's label for it. The death acceptance theory is discussed in this video that came out more than a year ago. The thesis for this essay is basically that you're dead for the entire game, and in certain versions of this theory, at least asleep for the entire game. And the whole journey is a post-mortem exploration of accepting your death. This is not the first person to put forward the idea, but it did make me aware of its popularity. My thoughts on Madotsuki being dead or asleep for the entire game are negative. Supernatural elements can make a story more interesting, but in Yumi's case, I think things are more profound when the real world is interpreted literally. It's a terrifying deep dive into the human condition of someone who's seen too much, that's had their innocence and normalcy ripped from their hands, forced to contend with visions so horrible that even after processing them, death is the most appealing choice. Having the ending take place in a dream sequence robs the story of stakes. What do I think happened to Madotsuki? Well, even putting forward a theory is an imperfect idea. Kikiyama intentionally kept things vague and probably doesn't have a concrete answer to the mysteries they've crafted anywhere. But theories like these are kind of the point of that, and it's a fun thought exercise, so why not try? I think Mado's parents were killed in an automobile accident, and sometime after this she was raped by her new caretaker. The situation would explain why she seems trapped in her room, why there's recurring themes of traffic accidents and body horror in her dreams, and why no one is there to help her. With no one to lean on and how much she hates her existence, Mado retreated into her mind to process her grief, and after careful reflection on every awful thing that's happened to her, she made peace with not carrying this anymore. What is the point of all this? What could we possibly take away from a story so terrible? Why would someone make a game so profoundly sad? To the point that even the wiki says even in death, Mado might not escape her nightmares. I do think a story that is just bleak for bleakness' sake can come across as vile, needlessly sad, and even pompous. But that's not the vibe that I get with Yume. I don't know if there is a theme or lesson we're supposed to extrapolate from this, if any, but I do think there's something you cannot deny after experiencing this game.
How'd you get to this weird, dumb planet?
Ego found me in the larva state.
In Guardians of the Galaxy 2, there's a scene with Drax and Mantis where they're sitting, trading life stories. Despite Drax's reputation throughout the movie as a mostly comic relief character, it's revealed that at one point, his daughter's life was taken from him. It's odd since he wears such a calm and cold face all the time. Mantis, confused by this, uses her unique ability to feel other people's emotions, placing a hand on his shoulder. She is flooded by an immense wave of suffering and anguish, unable to steal the same demeanor Drax does. She cries immediately, even though they're both feeling the exact same thing. Yume Nikki might be unforgivingly cruel to its protagonist, but it offers an important look into the incalculable levels of suffering a person can experience. We don't know much about Madotsuki, but it's safe to say she carries herself calmly, even despite the awful things in her head. People who are tormented by the past will feel a therapeutic effect on experiencing this game, particularly those who are more introverted or awkward at conveying how they feel. But even people who haven't suffered as much as Madotsuki will get worth from Yume Nikki. Kikiyama's ability to communicate existential terror and sadness through nothing but sounds and places will give even the least troubled player pause. For some, these dreams are their day-to-day existence, and showing others how that feels is valuable. Even if none of us have the ability to channel another person's feelings one for one like Mantis does, Yume can act as the next best thing. So, this obviously might not be Kiki's intention, but potentially, Madotsuki's tale has real-world value by teaching us the importance of empathy. What about the story itself, though? It's still a very unsatisfying way to cap things off. The thing is, Yume Nikki's story might not exactly end with a leap from the balcony, and the evidence for this lies in its lukewarm revision, Dream Diary. Because despite its reputation for not recapturing the magic of its source material, Dream Diary offered us some strange expansions on Yume Nikki's lore that paint things in a different light. While I personally think the story of Yume is more powerful when the balcony event actually happens, Dream Diary seems to disagree. Its effect on the main game's plot are immediate. In the very beginning, we see a blood splatter, where Madotsuki had fallen from her home, and provided you get the good ending, the final scene shows someone not so tormented that they have to leap to escape their nightmares, but a person ready to finally leave their personal prison and experience the real world. Madotsuki leaves her room at last. This was fun to make, especially that intro I cut together. Really hope you liked that one. Lots of the animation featured is from Gaia Duck. Their work is beautiful, and guess what? The audio during the Kikiyama snippet was edited entirely by me. The original only had music as a backdrop, so I had to use a lot of different sound effects with very careful placement to make it seem authentic. It was awesome to make. Other artist animations that were featured in this video include Jobaba and Chorikiku. Great stuff, truly. More Yume Nikki content is coming to the channel. I'm looking to cover .flow first as I hear great things. Thank you so much to my patrons, YouTube members, and Discord subscribers who allow me to make these, including Melody, Lou.02 or Lunch, Hidden, Falling Lotus, Lily, Simbone, Wind, Mike, Groovy Dawn, Mart, Sumwave, Sunny, Heartkey, Mr. B, Red Arch, Luke Des Ambivert, Zimber, and Neuroneer. You guys are fantastic and words can express how much I appreciate it. Please consider supporting the channel so I can start doing this full time. Thanks so much, and have a wonderful night. Booba.